Today in this video I am at Sliabh in County Armagh, and I am going to be climbing to one of the highest passage tombs in Ireland and looking for a cursed lake that might turn me into an old man. Well, an older man.
Sliabh is a 573 metre mountain in South County Armagh and is part of an ancient volcanic complex about 60 million years old. The more recent ice sheets about 13,000 years ago carved its form seen today.
I am hiking on the western side of what is known historically as the Gap of the North, or the Moiri Pass. Just over there you can see that mountain there is called Claremont Cairn now. And in between Sliabh and Claremont Cairn is historically the pathway from the east of Ireland in Leinster into Ulster. There's been many an army that have passed through this area. This is where gCuillinn fought off the armies of Queen Maeve in this gap here. This is a massively historic and mythological part of Ireland. Jesus. I'm buzzing to be going up this mountain because I have wanted to for ages. It is steeped with mythology and folklore and all of those good things that I love. I don't know if any of you out there have used all trails. It is frequently used in hiking memes. It was trying to tell me there's a shortcut up here that cuts 2k I think off the route, or 3k. It's like when you're driving on Google Maps, you're on like a main road and it's like, here, turn off here, this is way quicker. It's like this road. And it tells you that it's like a 100-kilometre road. And nobody's driving 100 kilometres on a road like this. Well, some people are, but it thinks it knows best because it's like, oh, somebody went up there once before. That looks quicker. Trying to cut my way up all those ferns and that bracken and lovely dense forest there where I bet you it's just full of felled trees from the storms over the winter. I'd rather take the extra 3k. There are so many stories associated with this mountain and this place. And Sliabh is where gCuillinn got his name. It's probably the most famous story attached to this spot, but it's not the one that I'm focusing on today, so I'll give you the brief on it. There was a famous blacksmith that lived at the foot of these mountains, and his name was Cuillinn. So famous that he could have Conchobar MacNessa, the king of Ulster, over for a feast. Young Setanta, which was gCuillinn's name as a boy, he was invited to this feast, but he was late because he was off playing a game of hurling with the lads. When Setanta arrived to Cuillinn's feasting hall, Cuillinn's great big guard dog was sitting outside the hall and doing his job. He went for Setanta. He got aggro with him, and Setanta, being the fearless young warrior, threw his sliotar up into the air, smashed it with his hurley, hit the dog and killed it, which was quite a feat for this young fella to kill this gigantic guard dog. So Cuillinn bursts out with the rest of his guard and all the men and Conchobar, and he sees his dead dog on the ground and Setanta standing there with his hurley in hand and his sliotar down the throat of his dog. He's completely devastated, as you would be, your dog is dead. So Setanta vows to be Cuillinn's personal guard until he can find, raise and train a new hound. And from then on, Setanta became known as gCuillinn, the Hound of Cuillinn. And this is Sliabh, named for that blacksmith who gave gCuillinn his name. But anyway, that is not the story that I'll be focusing on today. It's just a sweet little side nugget. I'll be going back to our man, the working class hero of mythology, Fionn McCumhaill. Not born of the gods or of the kings, but just a man among the warriors who he led. I'm aware that's probably an outrageous claim, considering that society didn't function in that way at all. And in fact, we probably don't really know how society functioned when Fionn McCumhaill was alive. But it sounds cool to call him the working class hero of mythology, doesn't it? So our story begins at a bit of a downtime for Fionn and the Fianna. Fionn is a well-established leader of the Fianna, who are a particularly talented group of warriors during the Fenian cycle of mythology. And their headquarters were at the Hill of Alwyn in County Kildare, which the site of is now completely missing because of quarrying, which I find kind of astonishing. And I know you can't protect every single thing in this country that has been touched by mythology, because you wouldn't be able to touch a thing. But in particular for the headquarters of the famed Fianna, I mean, the party in government right now is called Fianna Fáil, and the headquarters of the Fianna were sold off for quarrying and half the mountain destroyed. Amazingly Irish thing to do, unfortunately. Anyway, Fionn was sat atop the Hill of Alwyn and he was egging for a hunt, something to do. The man loved a hunt. Keeping a keen eye out, he spotted a fawn darting through the woods beneath him. So he called out to the men, anybody up for it? And he heard nothing back, except from his two hounds, Bran and Sliabh. So the three of them hopped up and they began chasing this fawn from County Kildare all the way here to Sliabh in County Armagh. I guess a nice little seat. Nice little seat that's covered in sheep shit. So after Fionn ran an ultra of 135 kilometres with Bran and Sliabh, they got to the base of the mountain and realised they had lost the trail of this fawn. So Fionn turned to the dogs and said, "You go that way, skirt around the mountain, and I'll go over the top. We'll cover more ground and we find the track." So the dogs dart off, and Fionn begins his climb up the mountain.
Fionn reached the peak and saw a woman sitting beside a lake. He approached to ask about the fawn, but as he got closer, he realised that she was sobbing into the dark water. He asked what was wrong, and she replied, "I have lost my ring of red gold in the lake, and I don't think I'll ever see it again."
So Fionn, being the heroic type, strips down to his jocks, dives straight into the lake. He plunges to the bottom and starts swimming laps. And eventually, the red gold ring sitting at the bottom of the lake catches the light. And he swims down, grabs it, bursts through the top of the lake, swims to the bank and hands it back to the woman. And the woman grabs the ring, jumps into the lake, plunges to the bottom and disappears. And Fionn, mightily confused, he begins to climb his way to the edge of the bank. But as he tries to claw his way out, he realises that the strength is gone from his arms. He looks at his hands and they're not his hands anymore. He looks at his arms and they're skinny and frail. He drags himself out of the lake and realises that the lake was cursed and the woman had tricked him. And he had turned into this old, frail man. He sat at the edge of the bank here, skinny-limbed and grey-haired, stuck here in this frail body. So some time goes by, and back at the Hill of Alwyn, the members of the Fianna start to get a bit worried that Fionn hasn't been seen in a while. It's not uncommon for these lads to go off and do things on their own, but the leader being missing for some time, they begin to get worried. So they gather a search party and they track him here to Sliabh. They get to the top of the mountain here and they see an old man sitting here staring into the lake. They, thinking he's a fisherman, they approach him and they say, "You haven't by chance seen a fair-haired young warrior named Fionn knocking around here, have you?" Old Fionn looks up at the men and begins to tell them the story of what had happened to him. The Fianna men were outraged that their fearless leader had been tricked
and cursed and turned into this elderly man. So they asked him, is there anything we can do? There must be something that we can do to reverse the curse. So he points that way and he says, see that mound atop the hill to the south? That is a she mound. She mounds are where the old gods, the Tuatha Danann, were driven into after they were defeated by the Gaels. More commonly hills and rats than passage tombs, they were thought to be dwellings and access into the other world and into ours. So Fionn says, in that she mound up the hill, there lives a woman that goes by many names. And he said that she showed herself to me in the shape of Mythical, the sister of Anya. I believe that that is an Cailleach Bera, the goddess of winter and darkness and cold. And that is who tricked him and turned him into an old man. Anya and Fionn had a bit of a fling with each other at this time. And Mythical, the sister of Anya, was quite jealous and wanted that love that Anya and Fionn had, that passion. So her and the Cailleach joined forces here to trick Fionn into becoming this elderly man, breaking Anya's heart in the process. So how best to get at the person you don't like than by attacking the person that they love. So the Fianna men rush up to the top of the hill. They burst their way into the house of an Cailleach, which it's still called today, but it was empty. Cailleach jumped into the lake. She plunged her way down into it, and these lakes are sometimes seen as portals into the other world, and she vanished. So unsure what to do, the men descend down the hill to the house of the famed blacksmith Cuillinn, because he is the caretaker of these lands and he might know what to do. So Fionn, sitting here, unable to do anything about his situation, he waits for his men, the Fianna, and hopefully for Cuillinn to come along with some answers. And after some time, he sees in the distance Cuillinn with the Fianna walking towards him. And Cuillinn has this cup of red gold filled with water. He walks over to Fionn and hands it to him. Fionn takes a big gulp out of it. The cup falls from his hand. His hand begins to turn youthful again. And he begins to feel the strength rush through his body and his arms grow, and he turns young again. Everything went back to the way it was for Fionn, except for his hair, which remained grey for the rest of his life, I believe. Fionn believed that this was an act of jealousy and a bit of collusion between Mythical and an Cailleach, because Anya was the goddess of summer. She was like this daisies coming out of her arse kind of goddess, you know, everybody loved her. So the Cailleach hated her. And an Cailleach being the goddess of winter, there's a constant battle of seasons between the two of them, between darkness and light and warmth and cold. So it's a story of jealousy and a story of the battle of the seasons, summer and winter. Anyway, I think I better get moving. It's said that the lake is still cursed. For anybody who touches the water, they won't necessarily turn old, but their hair will turn grey. Well, I just dipped my hand in the water, so let's see. It's mad, the stories up here are so plentiful that you'd almost forget that there is a Bronze Age burial cairn up here as well. Much smaller rocks though. I wonder, did the Neolithic use all the good rocks? That's all they had left. So that's the story of how Fionn got grey hair. I quite like that story because it always comes down to seasons and nature, and you have these goddesses who are all representations of seasons. And Cailleach, the goddess of winter, she's also known to be like a landscaper. Like she carved her way through mountains and created these cliffs, and
She is erosion. She is winter, harsh weather. And Anya, who is this beautiful, young spark that everybody loves and wants to be her friend, and the greatest warrior in Ireland has this great passionate fling with. She is the representation of summer and celebrated at midsummer. And then you have Bridget, the goddess Bridget, who is spring. She is the bringer of spring, the Celtic festival of Imbolc. All of these women goddesses represent the seasons, the changing of seasons. When I was telling that story, sitting beside the river there, and that fella came up behind me and he shouted over to me saying, "Are you doing a bit of fishing?" "How are you?"
"How are you doing? Are you fishing?"
I couldn't help but laugh, because that is how the Fianna found Fionn sitting somewhere around where I was sitting. They approached the owl lad thinking he was a fisherman, and your man shouts down to me, "Are you doing a bit of fishing?" Mad. I actually don't know if I'm on the right path here. Checking maps. Oh yeah, I'm way off. Yeah, I actually think I have to go back this way. Now, aren't I glad that I checked the maps? Maybe 150 meters away from the turn I missed. Love it when that happens and I don't accidentally go kilometers away. The colours in all the hedgerows are gorgeous. Okay, I made my way off the trail and onto this section of road now. I'm pretty sure I can see Sliabh Donard from here. Those are the moorings in the very distance there. And that big pointy fella, could be Cometa, but that's amazing if that's what that is. Oh, hello. Couple of donkeys. Hello. Hey, buddy. Hello. Little scratch. Hello. Hello. See, lads. Donkey or small horse? The old silly ears give it away. It's just another burial place of somebody a few thousand years ago. Conlum, South Cairn. It's pretty cool. Anyway, there's a gigantic castle over there, so I'm going to head in that direction, have a look at what it is. I think I can pick up a boher and then that will bring me back to the beginning of the trail where I started. Pretty cool. It's a big fancy hotel. I think there's a wedding on. And me, a dirty, sweaty hiker, cruising around here. I've gotten a few odd looks, so I'm gonna bail. I did see a trail that leads back to the park though, where my car is. So that's where I'm going. That was class.
I finished off what ended up being 16 kilometres with hair no more grey than when I started. Slán go fóill.